In this video, I wanted to go over complex numbers in section 3.1. But before we get started with this one, you might want to click on my video using the calculator to simplify radicals. This will help you with this section going forward. So the what you're going to be introduced to in here is going to be what is called I, which is same thing as imaginary. Um, Anytime you see a negative inside the square root, you can remove this negative and put the I on the outside of the square root and then take the square root of whatever number is inside. Also, too, I squared is also equal to -1 as a just say so you know as a reference point. But the first thing always again is just to remove the negative inside the square root symbol, leaving you with a positive value inside of the square root. So a few examples. If I have the square root of -7, again, I'm just going to remove the negative, put the I on the outside, and then take the square root of the number. Now, if you cannot take the square root of the number, we just leave it the square root of 7. But if you can take the square root, which we do with 16, so we take the negative out, put an I on the outside, and then with the square root of 16 is 4. So we have 4i. So again, if you see a negative, put the square root, the I on the outside, and take the square root, if possible, of the number in the inside. So number C, for C, we have a negative on the outside and a negative here. So again, I see a negative in the inside. Always remember again, remove this negative, make it a positive, put the I on the outside. And we notice that we can't take the square root of a -13. So we just leave it at the square root of -13. This is the same video clip. If you want to copy and paste this is exactly the same what I told you at the beginning, but you might want to learn how to simplify radicals using the calculator. So going to this example here, if I have the -48 square root, I take the negative square root of -1, which is going to be the I that I place in front. Find out the perfect root. Once we find the perfect root of, because 16 times 3 gives us the 48, so if 16 is a perfect root, we can take the square root of 16 and get 4, and then the square root of 3 just stays inside. So this can be written 4i the square root of 3 or 4 the square root of 3i. I prefer it this way because sometimes we make the mistake when writing by hand by putting the I beside the 3, and then we put the square root over it. There is no such thing as the square root of I. We don't put the I underneath the square root. So to avoid this part, I will just advise you just to put the I in front instead of in the back, so we won't put the square root all over everything. To get to the I feature on the calculator, first of all, you always want to use parentheses when solving these types of problems, especially when using I. Then you're going to hit second and then the decimal button. The second sign, if you this puts everything as far as you see little light blue above the calculator, or if you were using a TI-83, it's going to be yellow. That button here gets us to that light blue part on that button. So if you see here, there's a little I right above the decimal. So that's what I want to get to. That's why I hit second decimal, and then to get to the I. For these here, the next part of this section, we're going to be adding, subtracting, and multiplying and dividing these imaginary. Again, you want to be always remember to put parentheses around any complex numbers and parts. So if I want to add these two together, I mean, you can use your calculator or you can just add them straight up. Because this has an I and this has an I, you can actually uh, add those together because they're considered to be like terms. But then again, you can put this all in your calculator and you should get the right answer for that. So if I want to multiply together, that's fine. Again, remember our rule: take the negative out, take the negative out. We have two i's, so I times I gives us I squared, which is equal to -1. If you forget this, you can always put it in your calculator. It's I squared, and then hit equals, and then enter, and then it'll give you -1 to be your answer. So the square root of 16 is 4, square root of 25 is 5. So multiply together, get 20 with the negative. The I squared gives us a negative. Multiplying together, we get -20. You also cannot put this in your calculator also because the calculator is not going to recognize the square root of negative 16. So again, you have to do our first rule that we talked about by getting rid of this negative sign and making an I and put it on the outside. So if we're multiplying, you just strictly do distribute properly, a FOIL. 1 times this one times here, then 2i times 1 and 2i times 3i. You get all here. You combine like terms, and then this is going to be our final answer. Same thing if we're squaring. You can do the same thing again. Put this in parentheses. If you just write 3 minus 7i and then square it, is only going to square the back part. That's why the whole thing needs to be in parentheses. Everything needs to be in parentheses when working with imaginary numbers. So if we need to simplify just using the I, again, you can just, the TI-84 is probably the best calculator to use because it gives us a straight answer. If I take the I and raise it to the 37th power, the calculator TI-84 upgrade gives us the exact answer of I. If you're using a TI-83 or an older version calculator, then they're probably going to give you an answer of E. Again, if you see that E, it's going to be the exact same answer of 0. So just it'll say like 3 E, and then that's going to make it 0 plus I, which is giving me this I here. That's the older version of the calculator. So just again replace that E, whatever the answer is, with a 0, and then you should get the same answers like so. Conjugates, if you're doing a conjugate, by dividing these two, 2 minus 5i minus 1 over 1 minus 6i, you have to do the conjugate of the denominator only. So the conjugate of what that mean is you just take the plus sign and make it a minus, or if you have a subtraction sign, you make it a plus. In this case here, we're given a subtraction sign, so we make it a plus. So we rewrite it, make sure you do whatever you do on the bottom, you also do on top. Once I FOIL all this, I'm going to get 32 plus 7i, and it can be written this way also. If you're doing this in a calculator, again, you have to put parentheses. I know it's not listed here as far as parentheses, but you have to do parentheses. If you want to practice, try doing this problem here. Put it in your calculator, 2 minus 5i over 1 minus 6i, and just hit enter. No parentheses. You notice you will not get this answer. If you do use the parentheses top for the numerator and then the denominator put parentheses around it, then you get this exact answer. Now, it might give you a decimal. If it gives you a decimal, just hit math, enter to change it to a fraction so it can look like this. If you have any questions or concerns with this section, please let me know.